Welcome to Digital Dominators, the podcast that helps small business owners grow their confidence, sharpen their digital skills, and actually enjoy showing up online. I'm Sooz, your host, tech coach, and digital cheerleader, and every week I chat with brilliant experts to bring you practical tips, smart strategies, and the tools and tech to make business easier. From social media marketing to websites, content to confidence, AI to automation, we're breaking it down into simple steps you can actually use. If you're ready to make things simpler and more successful in your digital world, you're in the right place. Let's get stuck in. Welcome back to Digital Dominators, the podcast where we explore the skills, systems, and strategies that help you build better digital experiences, stronger teams, and smarter businesses. Today's episode is all about connection and what it really takes to make remote work, collaboration, and facilitation not just effective, but extraordinary. Because let's be honest, so many people have spent the last few years trying to copy what worked in person and then paste it online. But the truth is, remote doesn't have to be a compromise. In fact, when done right, it can be even better. Emily Gardner is a facilitator, trainer, and founder of Emily Facilitates, where she helps people design and deliver remote and in-person sessions that don't just work, they wow. She's trained teams from all over the world in how to plan and lead meetings, workshops, and learning experiences that generate better, faster results, whether that's across the table or across time zones. Emily believes the key isn't to replicate the room, it's to redesign it. She teaches people how to rethink interaction, energy, and engagement in virtual spaces so that collaboration feels effortless, inclusive, and human. In this episode, we're talking about what makes remote sessions truly work, how to avoid digital fatigue, and why facilitation is one of the most powerful skills for the future of work. So let's get into it. Hi, Emily.
Hi, Sooz. Thanks so much for having me.
I have been so excited for this episode because I know that we're just going to chat all the fun things that we get to do when we're working with people, and it's taken us a wee bit of a time to get here as well with our reschedules and things because there's been so much going on. But I'm so glad that you're here with me today, Emily.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember us talking about what we were going to discuss. I mean, way back when, like months ago, as you mentioned, months ago, many months ago. And it just aligned really fast, didn't it? And then we were like, cool. What should we do with the rest of this time? Let's just chat, I guess, because it happened very naturally.
It did. So Emily, tell us how, now that you've heard your bio being read out by me, tell us, how did you get into facilitation? How did you get to what you're doing? Because we haven't really talked, I don't actually know too much about that because we haven't really had too much of a background chat. But yeah, I want to hear about how you got into facilitation.
Sure. Well, like most facilitators, I'm going to say pretty much all facilitators, because I've never actually come across someone that this wasn't the case for. I did not start my career as a facilitator. Indeed, when I was facilitating, I didn't know that's what it was for quite some time. So my career began in financial services. I worked for a financial services organization here in the UK. I was in the insurance product team. I ended up kind of by chance in the innovation department, which sounds really exciting, but it was just me and one other person. I was the second employee of that department, and we had absolutely no idea what we were doing, not a clue, no experience. We started to read books and start trying to run workshops. I remember reading Sprints by Jake Knapp and being like, yeah, we're going to go out and do these things. Sure, we can do that. No problem. Yeah, it was a great experience. And I remember running my first real facilitation event, which was a cross-company innovation day. So I didn't make it easy for myself. And getting that sort of light bulb moment of thinking, I don't know what this is, but this is what I want to do. So I stayed there for a while running various different innovation projects, but ultimately they didn't have much resource and money to put behind innovation. And I got a bit fed up of running all these great sessions and coming up with great ideas and them not going anywhere. So I thought, okay, I really enjoy this facilitation thing. I want to get more exposure to doing this with lots and lots of different companies and lots of different environments. And so I moved into consultancy, and I worked as an innovation consultant for many years, working with lots of different companies. I guess this is where the remote and global stuff first started to come in for me. But after some time doing that, I had a couple of revelations. The first one was that some people are ideas motivated and other people are people motivated. I was working with a lot of colleagues who were really ideas motivated people. You know, we would run these projects. They'd be like, wow, this is an amazing solution. We've come up with an amazing idea. Can't wait to see this live in the market. I was like, I just like running the workshops. I mean, you know, it's cool. But what I really like is the people dimension. And I had another revelation around the same time that the people that we were working with, they really enjoyed the projects and they just wanted to be able to do them for themselves, you know? And from a kind of, I guess, ethical standpoint, I also didn't want to be like, the only way you can do this again is by paying another consultancy to come in for X amount of money. No, people should be able to do these things for themselves. There's no reason why they can't. And so I sort of started to bang the drum internally for we should have a training business. You know, we need to teach people how to do this stuff for themselves. And for me, that really went beyond just the innovation skills like design thinking and lean and all of that good stuff. It's great. But ultimately, if you don't get the people dimension right, you're not going to be successful because the power of people is more powerful than the idea every single time. So the training that I was developing and running there with these big global organizations was about how we do innovation successfully with that sort of bent that I had towards the facilitation side as well. And during that time, the training business really took off. And I mention that because it really exploded during the time of the pandemic. And I think that I was reflecting before joining to talk about this. And that for me was the fundamental point where this philosophy that we're going to talk about in the podcast, that's where it came from for me, was during the pandemic and running that training business. Because in order to be successful, we had to transform everything into those remote settings. So this period all through the pandemic after that was really about running and growing that training business. And then back about 2 years ago now, we won an award. We won silver for Learning Provider of the Year, and it was kind of a testament to that learning design. And, you know, I think definitely one of my proudest achievements, if not my most proud achievement professionally. And I'd always wanted to be an entrepreneur, go off by myself, and I wanted to deviate from just doing that innovation context and focus on the facilitation skills. That led me to kind of split off and do what I'm doing today, which, as you mentioned, is facilitating stuff, but also in a very passionate way, teaching other people how to facilitate. I would much rather work with people to train them to be facilitators than go in and just facilitate stuff myself, because I'm really very enthusiastic about giving those skills to other people. That's what really motivates me and gets me going.
Amazing, Emily. Like, there's so much to what you've got in your journey that I want to talk about, but I think it would take more than an hour within the episode. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and take out bits that I think will relate to our whole conversation, and then I think we'll probably need to have another chat at some point to address some other of them. But the concept to start off with is, let's just break into the remote aspect of it, right? So when it comes to in-person facilitation and then remote facilitation, and how we were, or the world was forced into being remote and forced into being digital during the pandemic. There's this thing of where people hate being online all the time.
Yeah.
And so they put this negative aspect of being in a remote environment, no matter what kind of remote environment that is. So when it comes to learning and learning experiences in a remote environment, they can't almost put the same context of maybe what they would have done in an in-person, round the table, team building, meeting room environment. And so what do you think? What are your thoughts around that? I'm not going to ask a specific thought. What are your thoughts around all of that concept of being online, being in person, and the mindset that people have between the two?
Yeah, and I think I can take it very specifically back to that key like inflection point and explain kind of where the philosophy came from there, because before the pandemic, this training that we were doing, which at that time was one product, like a fundamentals innovation boot camp that was really, let's call it zingy, like interactive, fun. Innovation is a very fun and dynamic topic, isn't it? And we'd really captured that spirit in this product that we were delivering face to face. And I remember when the pandemic hit, there was this feeling internally of, what are we going to do now? Everything that we do is just going to be worse, because workshops aren't going to be the same. Training's not going to be the same. The way we connect with our clients is not going to be the same. At that point in time, I was going to Italy every 2 weeks to have face-to-face meetings with clients. Looking back, that is insane, but it's because we had this mentality of, well, face-to-face is always better. If you want to build relationships, if you want to deliver good stuff, you have to be in person. And I remember being kind of surrounded by this sea of negativity almost, and thinking, well, why does it have to be worse? I think that people have this idea that something that you run in person that you change to virtually is just going to be the poor cousin of that thing. And in this scenario, we had one product, right, that we were selling, one training product. So the assumption was, well, it's just going to be that, but it's going to be worse because it's online. And instead, I was saying we need to adopt this mindset of, it's going to be different, but not different in a worse way. You can't aim for worse. You've got to aim for just as good, if not better, online than it is face to face. And that's the philosophy that took me through that journey at that time. And it's the philosophy that I've continued to have ever since.
So you talked about a philosophy there, and you've talked about a bit of a framework or a kind of structure that you use. So is that something that you've got in place and that you help other people understand a bit more? Talk about that philosophy a little bit more, Emily.
Yeah. So I like to think about sessions or designing sessions in terms of maps. And these maps are the course that you're going to chart to take people from one thing to another. Ultimately, I think facilitation is just this from and to, and you can apply that from and to anything you're doing, whether you're running a workshop or whether it's just a meeting that you run every day. You're taking people from one thing to another. And on that map, there's 4 kind of elements that I would focus on. The first one is the one that everybody thinks of, which is the agenda. So how are you going to take people from one thing to another in terms of the things that are actually going to happen in that time? And online and face-to-face is different in terms of the amount of time you can bring people together for that. Because as you said, people get digital fatigue. So you need to first think about how you're going to set things up in the right way to have the right blocks of time available. And so, for example, for that product that we were running face to face, that was 2 whole day sessions. While running that remotely, I would do 3 times 3 hours, on separate days to give people that break. And for the agenda, what I always suggest to people is work backwards. So you have the outcome, that thing you want to deliver, work backwards in terms of the activities or the content that you need to achieve that outcome, and use that to dictate the length of the session. Because what I see people doing all the time is thinking, okay, I'm going to run an ideation session. Let's all come up with ideas. And the more time I give that, the better. So I'll put 3 hours in everybody's calendar. They'll turn up for that 3 hours and we'll get the most out of that session. That's just simply not the best way that it's going to work. So you need to think about your first map being this agenda. The second map that you're going to layer on top is the energy map. And the energy map is so important for remote sessions, because when you're face to face with people in the room, you can see where people are getting to that point where everyone's kind of on the edge of their seat, like, I want to get up, I need to stretch. You can see people's faces flicking off, right? Yeah. So to introduce something like a minimal movement, like raise a hand, move around, let's go into an activity, all of that sort of stuff. It's easier to shift that face to face. I still always tell people to plan for it. You should have a spike of energy every 15 minutes in every session that you run in order to keep it engaging. But it's even more important remotely that we're thinking about what those spikes of energy are and being creative with it as well. I think one key aspect of redesigning the remote experience involves not just thinking about how can I engage people online. It's like, even though you're sitting where you are in your house, I'm sitting in my house. That doesn't mean I can't move around. Like, I'm not tied to the computer. We can still have minimal movements. We can still have walk and talks. We can still have breaks. There's all sorts of things you can do to bring that energy. And then the third map that we're going to bring is this map of the interaction styles. So I talk about forward alongside behind. Forward being I'm talking, you're listening, alongside being collaborative work, and behind being the more coaching, reflective style. We want to move those things into place as well. And last but not least, personalities. So thinking about, even if I'm entering a Zoom room, let's say, I'm running a workshop with people I've never met before, I need to know how I'm going to make that a balanced and accessible experience for everybody, whether you're extroverted and you prefer to think by speaking, or you're introverted and you prefer to think before you speak. I need to plan how I'm going to bring that equality into the sessions that I run. So this philosophy of making things just as good, if not better, online, the structures and the way I would help people to design those sessions is fundamentally the same. But I think it needs to start from this place of saying, when you have a session that you were going to run face to face, but now you're running it remotely, it's not the case of thinking, oh, well, I can't do that anymore, so I'm just not going to put in that element. I'm not going to put in that spike of energy. I'm not going to have that activity because I don't know how it would work, so I'll just cut it out. It's not about that. It's about using those maps and those principles to design something that works really well in that remote setting and isn't just a cut and paste from your face-to-face experience, minusing the interactive elements that you feel like you can't do anymore.
As a creator, I used to spend hours re-recording voiceovers to get the perfect tone. But finding reliable voice talent, booking studio time, and editing takes forever, and it can break the bank. That's why I recommend 11 Labs. It generates ultra-realistic AI voices and even clones your own, all in seconds. With natural-sounding speech, multilingual support, and seamless text-to-speech conversion, 11 Labs powers podcasts, audiobooks, training modules, and more. No mic required. Ready to level up your audio? Try it free today at allmylink.me/TC11labs and bring your scripts to life with 11 Labs.
Or sticking people in a breakout room and just letting them get on with it whilst they would have been doing that round a table.
Exactly.
And then you could walk around and then check the tone of the room. And when you have breakout rooms, you can't really do that as effectively.
Yeah.
Jumping from room to room. So it is a different way. You do need to redesign for that kind of remote environment. But I do like that structure that you've discussed there and that kind of framework. When it comes to the types of way that people learn, this is what's interesting as well within the remote environment, right? So as you talked about, as facilitators, you can read the room, right? So you can adapt and change the room. Mm-hmm. But when it's online, it's more difficult. So you can't really tell if that person is understanding from what you've said or from what they've seen or from what they're doing. And then you can give them feedback and help them learn better because you're reading how they're best learning, right? But in an online environment, that's more challenging. So you almost need to design for those types of learners as well. Is that what you talk about too, Emily, in your framework in some sort of way?
Yeah, 100%. It's designing for diversity, right? Because as you said, different people work in different ways. And if you think about the classic learning styles, you want to have a blend of all of those in the sessions that you run, whether that's face-to-face or remote. For auditory learners, the remote setting works pretty well for them because oftentimes what you're doing is you're introducing a topic or a discussion or whatever. You're sending people into breakout rooms where they get to discuss it again, and then you come back to the main room and you're discussing it again. In a training environment, if you're an auditory learner, you're like, fantastic, this is absolutely nailed for me. Yeah. From a visual perspective, often there's something missing, and that can manifest in the form of people just using, your classic bullet pointed slide design, which is not engaging at all. And
death by PowerPoint, isn't it?
Death by PowerPoint. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And real resistance to people doing things that's outside of just sitting there and listening. I always encourage people to get people drawing, get people doing things that helps them to visualize if you can. I mean, it can work out pretty expensive, but it's amazing when you do get the chance to do it. I don't know if you've ever worked with an illustrator, Sooz, in training sessions that you've run
So
before.
having somebody illustrate when you're delivering in some sort of way.
Yeah, I think it works even better remotely to in person, actually. So in person, you'd usually have the illustrator there, you know, visiting the different groups and drawing things as they go. Remotely, it works even better because what they'll do is put a bird's eye view camera. And as people are talking and they're sharing, say you're building a product or an idea, they will be drawing it out as you talk through it. So this wonderful picture emerges, and it's lovely for people like me who are very task orientated because you see the momentum and the results in the room, but it's also great for people who are visual thinkers. So
Yeah.
this visual aspect is important. And the kinesthetic aspect is also really important. So learning through experiences. And there's many ways you can do that. You know, you can do that through the stories that you tell, the case studies that you bring in. But it's also about thinking about how you get people doing things practically in the sessions that you run. I'll give you an example. So the innovation bootcampy stuff that I run, one exercise that I really like to do in the room is getting people to embody the innovation process. So I will have different people in the room playing different roles. Some people are playing customers, which is a highly important part of the innovation process. Other people are playing gates, so I get them to physically stand there and stand in the way of ideas getting through this process without the correct validation. Getting people to act out the different stages, it really brings it to life for them and makes it super tangible. So this is a good example where, as I was saying, someone might think, well, the remote equivalent of that is that we can't do the activity, so I'll just talk through the process and hope that it goes in. No, it's not the right way to do it. Like, you need to think of another way to make that a kinesthetic experience. So running those sessions, I was sending packs of Lego out to people in the post, and we were going through that same process where they were essentially building the room in front of them and going through that process of mapping out that innovation methodology, because I knew, like, if I just talk through this, it's not alive enough for it to be retained, you know, like it's not going to be effective. So yeah, you're absolutely right. You need those different learning styles built in order to make that session just as good for every person there, because we can't just rest on our laurels and say, well, some people enjoy this and get the most out of it and other people won't. We don't want to go in with that mindset. We want to go in with the mindset of, this is a session that's going to work for everyone.
And I think we should touch on the fact that this isn't just for kind of training environments. This is for any kind of, when we're looking in the remote space, it is, if you're a manager speaking with your team, if you've got your weekly one-to-one with your individual team members on a Friday that you've got to clock in as a business or a team leader, like, it's, these techniques can be used to structure any type of online or actually in person as well environment, and actually making it human and being people to people in your using, and I think it's that, for me, I talk about the mindset of the technology being a tool. It's the tool to help you to do that. So in the same way that we use utensils while we're cooking, right? We can't whisk without an actual whisk. We try with a fork, but you know, it's that type of thing. We use technology in the same way. So I think, yeah, people need to remember that it's not just trainers, it's everybody that can use these techniques as well.
Yeah, absolutely correct. I remember I launched back in March my book, which is called The Path of the Guide, which is all about, for anybody working within a business context, like, how do you pick up and start using the skills of facilitation in your day-to-day? Because like you say, these are skills that everybody needs and should be using all of the time. I had a load of beta readers reading that book, and one of them came back and said, but Emily, what if it's just a meeting? Like, I feel like I need a half a page cheat sheet of what are the 3 to 5 things I should do to make my next meeting amazing. And I was like, yeah, this is exactly what it's about, you know? Like, one thing that I'm really passionate about, and I tell people this all the time, it's a bit of a funny phrasing, but I say that everything that you run, every from and to, whether that is something that you do every day, like a sprint stand up, or whether that's something that is a complete one off, it needs to have a hot start and a hot end. What do I mean by that? I mean, when you join the meeting and you're the host, don't just let people dribble in and say, oh, okay, should we get started? Right then, no agenda. Let's just wibble our way through this. And then at the end, we'll say, I think that's it. And everyone's like, yeah, see you later. You know, we don't want that. You want every session to have a hot start. That could be a quote, it could be a question, it could be a why we're here, it could be something motivational, and a hot end. So we're not just ending with any questions, anyone else got anything else to say, but everyone joins the room and they feel like we've arrived, we're here, we know what we're doing here.
Yeah.
And everyone leaves thinking, great, that was impactful. You know, these small things actually make a massive difference to the way we're perceived by our clients, by our colleagues, by our customers. And they also make a difference to the workplace at large and the purpose and the intention we bring in. I think these things really matter.
It's the attention to detail skill that I talk about as well. Like, those little details make a difference, because learning isn't just the task as well from taking them from A to B. It's all the other things that put those connectors together for them, that connect all their senses and all their learning environments together in that way as well. So I think it's super important for people to think about the experience that they're having with a person, whether that is in person or online as well. And how do you make that an experience in a way, and not just a task that has to be achieved? Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Am I
yeah.
explaining that in some sort of way?
Yeah,
and when it's in
100%.
person, we can physically feel the energy. We can, like, we see, oh, the energy in this room. But when it's online, we only really know the energy in the room if nobody's got their camera on, right? Because people put on their backgrounds and they're on mute and all of that stuff as well. So
exactly.
we have to know more human skills to understand and learn in a remote environment as well, I think, too, isn't there? So there's a lot around human skills development and facilitation.
Yeah, and just being human, you know, I know this is something that you really stand for. I often ask people to imagine doing things in the remote environment but face to face. So let me give you an example. If we arranged that we were going to have a meeting together, and in that meeting, I just put a paper bag over my head and was doing my washing up, you wouldn't be best pleased. But somehow in the remote environment, you know, it's okay to be doing your washing up and not have your camera on and just back off and not really contribute, you know.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't do that in that face-to-face environment, the same way that, you know, if you were having a conversation with somebody, you wouldn't just turn around and walk off. So when you imagine taking those scenarios and putting them in person, you realize, actually, do you know what? That's not the best etiquette, and it's also not the best way to get things done.
Exactly. Yeah. And this is where, I don't know if you've had this when you've been having the introductory conversations with clients about online training environments with them, and they do. And I've had this conversation, especially with like things like funded or like big projects in that way, and you're delivering them online and you're going, I've said in the past, yeah, it'd be mandatory for camera on. And some people are like, nope, can't have that. And you're like, well, how do we quantify? How do we build in the learning environment if their cameras are not on? How do we do that? And it's trying to get their mindset to see that actually we need to see it's humans, no matter if it's through a screen. It's still a human experience that we need to have face to face. And it's a level of that societal human interaction, as I'm not going to be in the same room as you and face the opposite direction and refuse to speak to you when we're in a learning environment. And it's just the human behaviors online shouldn't be any different in that way than they are in person. But again, there were so many companies trying to meet everybody's needs in an online environment. And in the same way for a learning environment, I don't think cameras on are, and I don't know if you heard about this as well. I know I'm rambling a bit now, but it just came to mind. Remember during COVID, where teachers were forced to go into online facilitation, and their apprehension towards using technology in general is higher than the average person, usually a working person. But when they were forced to deliver to young people, depending on their age, some of the younger people weren't allowed to have their cameras on. And how is a teacher supposed to teach children without their cameras on in an environment? Like, I don't get it. So I think the human stuff is so important. Face to face is super important. What do you think about avatars and AI avatars and facilitation and what that's looking like in the future, especially as people experience bots and experience influencers in the online space? What do you think about AI avatars being used for training facilitators in the online space?
Wow, that's a super interesting question. My cogs were already whirring when you you called it rambling, but I thought it was really interesting.
I know, I'm on like 3. This is why I know this conversation will go for hours, because I go on different streams of what we can talk about, Emily. But I just thought about the AI avatar stuff because I'm trying to create an AI avatar for myself, and I have tried to for the last year, but I can't. It won't replicate me because of my accent, because of how I look, how I interact. It's just, I'm not my standard American. There's not enough data for a Scottish person.
Yeah.
In the AI tools, right? So there's a lot of data challenges towards that. But when it comes to the human interaction, I want an AI avatar so I can give it the context and it can then create the content for me, and then I've got constant training going out on my behalf. I know that Stephen Bartlett and all that is doing his own. He's got his own podcast now with his avatar. He's starting that as well. Yeah, he's going down that kind of avatar route as well. So there's parts of this, but what do you think about it within facilitation? Because, like Synthesize and then like the Accenture and all the kind of Captivate, all of those types of tools for online and kind of the e-learning space. But we're going to see it now, I think, for live facilitation in some sort of way, I think, with the AI avatars. What are your thoughts around it?
Wow, kind of terrifying, no? I mean, I always say facilitation is 90% preparation, 10% improvisation, but the preparation unlocks that ability to walk into a room and just, this is going to sound like a terrible turn of phrase, but read the vibes. I don't think an avatar will ever be able to do that. I also think that when it comes to AI for facilitation, even on the planning side, use with caution. Give yourself a little bit of a test bed. Imagine that you're running an online session that is 3 hours and ask ChatGPT to design it for you, because I've done this test.
It can't.
It will give you a 3-hour session with 0 breaks.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody should be doing that, especially not online. Like, the gold standard, in my opinion, is you should have a break every hour. And if you're running a session that is remote, it should be less. It should be more like 50 minutes.
Yep.
ChatGPT doesn't understand the differences between running sessions online and in person.
It doesn't understand it based upon demographic either. So it doesn't understand the context of what a human in a human environment is, and across time zones in that way as well. So if you've got learners based in the US, learners based in EMEA, it's very different times of day for them. So they've got different feelings of one want to go home, when they're just starting their day. They're like, yes, training in the morning. And some are like, God, I've got training. I just want to go home. If I was in the office, I might be able to Skype this, right? So there's that type of behaviours that people, that the tool won't be able to know. ChatGPT doesn't know that stuff as well. But no, AI avatars, no for facilitation. I don't think so either. I don't think so for...
I don't think so.
Because you said 90 to 10% there, I would say it's a wee bit bigger. I think there's sometimes a lot more flexibility that you have to bring in depending on the environment that you're in. Because it could be the people that you have to adapt completely. You have to scrap it sometimes, and it's the practice. That only comes from practice as well, right?
It's true.
The practice from facilitation or
true.
training.
I wanted to bring up something you mentioned way back because it's just in my mind. I really want to share it. When you were talking about this, like cameras on, cameras off, expectation, all of that side of things, there's a really good TED talk that I use all the time when I do confidence coaching and that sort of stuff, by Deborah Francis White. It's called Charisma versus Stage Fright. Have you ever seen it?
No, I've not, but that'll be on my wish list. No.
So you've got to watch it. It's a fantastic TED talk. And in that, she gives a bit of a case study where she was asked to give a talk at a law firm. And before she went in, the person who was helping to organize this talk with her said, they'll be on their phones. So don't take offense, they're always like that. And her response is, well,
I do.
if any of them are on their phones, I will personally give you the money back for me delivering this talk, because what I'm doing should be engaging enough that they don't want to be on their phones, And I think this is another aspiration thing that we should aim for in the sessions that we run remotely, because it's our job to design something that is good enough that people want to be there, There has to be an element of setting mindsets and expectations for the session. Absolutely. But there also needs to be a side of us that is thinking, you know what? I know that I'm going to take this room on this journey and people are going to want to be engaged. I think one of the biggest compliments I ever received on my facilitation was I ran a virtual session for a financial services company. And at the end of the session, someone raised their hand and I was like, yeah. And he was like, I just want to let you know, I was planning to use this 3 hours to do my emails and I haven't even opened my inbox. And I thought, that is it. That is it. It doesn't get better than that when you're running remote sessions, when people come in with that feeling of, you know what, this is great because it's a 3-hour block in my calendar, which essentially means I can get all my admin done.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
People will be coming in like that. And it's our job to anticipate that and think, you know what, I can do things about that. It's not gonna happen.
And that's what, as a person imagine if that's what you thought every time a 3-hour block was put in your calendar. Can you imagine how engaged your team would be?
Yeah.
Imagine how motivated they would be about what it is that I'm going to be learning now that is going to make my life a little bit easier.
Exactly.
Imagine if that was the
Yeah.
experience and the outcome that they got. And imagine if that's what every facilitator thought as well, that that's what their learners should be getting and coming back to as well. Because I do think that there's a lot of facilitators out there that don't think like that. They don't care about their learners as much in the same way,
Yeah.
I think, as well, which is why they don't deliver interactive or engaging learning experiences. And that's why there's people like me and you trying to change the face of it in some sort of way, because it should be fun, right? It should be fun.
Yeah.
It should be engaging and interactive. People love playing games. We have to play to learn better and create those environments of fun and engagement.
And one activity that I take people through all the time. So I do quite a lot of work with other facilitators who want to level up their skills, or they want to work on describing what they do to other people, because there isn't a facilitator out there who won't say I run engaging interactive sessions.
Mm-hmm.
No one's going to say that. But it's the same as when companies say they're customer centric. They all say it. Is it really true? Probably not. So what I encourage people to do is take these adjectives and work the level down so you can say to your clients, explain to them how is going to be an engaging and interactive session. Because if you don't make that clear, if you're not able to articulate that, and if you're not able to embody that in your sessions, you will miss the mark. It's inevitable that you're going to miss the mark on doing those kinds of things. You know what I mean? And I think it's really important that at the start of our sessions, we're able to do something similar. So we're able to introduce some really tangible rules and behaviors for that session that people follow. So a good example for the remote environment, I have one that I call Digi-Mindful. So I tell people at the beginning, one of the mindsets for today is we're going to be Digi-Mindful. What does this mean? Well, we're engaging on our computers. Statistically, if I put my fingers at 30 centimeters distance, that is the distance between my main device and my second device. And if I do it right now, I have my phone right here. But being Digi-Mindful means I'm going to give you 30 seconds now. There are things on your computer that are distracting. There are things on this device, your phone, sitting within 30 centimeters reach that's also distracting. We're together for X period of time. And during that period of time, we're going to have a Digi-Mindful environment. So here's your 30 seconds. Take it now. Pause your notifications. Shut your inbox. Turn your phone on to silent, like all of these important things. Giving people a practical way to embody that at the start of the session is so important, because it takes away some of those interferences later. We all know how distracting our devices are. Even if we want to be really engaged with a session, maybe we are really engaged, and then I've got WhatsApp up on my computer, it's just pinged in the top right-hand corner. That's your attention lost. So we need to give ourselves the best chance for success in setting that environment at the beginning. And oftentimes people think if it's a remote session, I'm not in control of other people's environments. Yes, that's true. Like we can't go into the room, as I like to do face to face, an hour early and redesign all the furniture and move everything around. But we can encourage people to make changes to their own space for them to get the most out of that session. And I think a lot of people, they just think that's not accessible to them, but it absolutely is. It can be a real core part of the setup that makes that session a big success.
Yeah, it's super important. Super important to make sure that it's the right environment for people as well, Emily. So let's talk a little bit more about your book and how people can get the most out of your book and what you talk about in that. Let's share a little bit more about that, Emily.
Yeah, sure. So the book actually came about in a kind of strange, organic way, I guess, for me. So as I mentioned, I've been facilitating for many years, and at the start, I didn't know what I was doing. And pretty much from the very beginning, I am somebody who likes to write, like creatively, as well as just using it as a way to process my own thoughts. And so I had a Word document on my computer, and every time I would run a session, I would write down what didn't work, what did work, tips, things that I'd learned from the road from other facilitators. And that Word document kept getting longer and longer for a really good period of time, 4 or 5 years, until one day I sat down and looked at it and thought, do you know what? I'm going to take this seriously. I think that there is something here. You know, there's a methodology that is buried somewhere in all of this stuff that I've written down. And so I took a week off and ended up with the bones of a book and a methodology, which I call the path of the guide. The guide because we're taking people from and to, and the path because it's how we're going to take people there.
Yeah, I love it. And I love the fact that it's come from your notebook and all of your learnings that you get. You mentioned there as well around how the tips that you got from other facilitators. And I love that too, because I find when you've got really good facilitators and trainers in the room, they bang so well off each other.
Yeah.
And they just know how to hit things off. It's like a really orchestra. It's a really well-tuned environment when the trainers are all really on the same page and working well together because they're creating this entire space of fun and learning environment in that way. But it is so important that you've written all of those things down and then you've packaged it up to be able to help facilitators. So the book isn't just for facilitators, it's for everybody, right? Who best to kind of read your book, Emily?
Yeah, sure. So the book really is for anyone unlocking these facilitation skills. It's really been interesting since publishing it, seeing who is reading it. Some people are those that they have a job that is not really facilitation related at all, but they come across the book and think this is a key skill for the future of work, which it absolutely is. If you were to go on the World Economic Forum Future of Jobs report right now and look at the things that are down there, it's things like communication, collaboration, critical thinking, innovation. These are all things that facilitators bring. So having this skill is going to be essential for the future of work. There are people who have been reading it that are facilitators that want to better define their approach and enhance their skills. It's really for anybody that operates in a work environment. So, well, my mum's retired. She is also a massive fan of the book and said she took things from it. So I don't know how she's applying it in her retired life, but yeah, really is for everyone. And particularly if you want to get started or you just want to enhance and hone your skills as a facilitator, I'd say, yeah, give it a read.
I think it's about as well, like maybe you're finished university and you're just going straight into work and you don't really know this dynamic in this space. It's not the same as it used to be pre-COVID. You're not really going into an office, or you might just be fully remote, or you might be hybrid, a mixture of, you don't have a buddy in the same way like you would have had for a week. You might not have a same full week onboarding. Like I used to deliver the 1 week induction that they would have from the technology training point of view when people would come to the law firm, and that's like, they don't really get a lot of that in the same way. And so if you're a young person, or you're moving from one environment to another environment, like learning these skills that you might not have had to do before, or maybe, again, we know that in the future of work, jobs are changing. And as more AI and automation tools take over some tasks, especially administrative tasks. We're also seeing a lot of graduates. There's not a lot, not the same amount of graduate roles and things like that, moving more into the apprentice. It is that type of like, right, I need to learn I need skills, I need to develop skills. And we're also seeing a demographic in the workforce that maybe haven't had any other job prior to going to university and then going into the workforce. So they're not learning their customer service skills. They're
100%.
not learning retail. Most people with retail experience have got human skills, positively or negatively, but they've been dealing with humans in some sort of way. And we're seeing a generation of those moving into the workforce that don't have those kind of human skills, that have only interacted by a screen that is 10 centimeters away from their. So we have what's the word, that have been working prior to technology coming out to make sure that we are helping people be more human, and not to judge them or to apprehend them or make them feel uncomfortable whenever they do anything wrong, because that is where people are behaving sometimes in an online environment. But we have to be more human, more respectful, more caring, more nurturing, more empathetic. Again, more of these human skills when it comes to encouraging a generation and another generation after that to be more human again. We have to be able to be kind within that and be respectful of it in some way.
I'm really glad that you raised this example of people entering the workplace, because I genuinely believe that for me, facilitation is the skill that has made my career. Because think back to the start of that career journey, I'm working in one specific team within a financial services organization. When I started facilitating, everything changed for me. It opened a huge number of doors, because if you have something, a skill that nobody else has, or very few people have within an organization, being that person that can bring the human dynamic into rooms becomes the biggest networking tool that you will ever have. This is where Emily Facilitates came from, because that's what people would say about me, like, Emily facilitates, that's what she does. I started off in a very small environment doing my thing, and the word got around, like, if you have a problem that you need to fix, if you have a thorny issue that needs to be discussed, Emily can facilitate that. Do you know Emily? She works in the product team. She can come and she can facilitate that for you. And I ended up doing all sorts across the organization and getting to know so many different people, learning from so many different people. And it helps you to become known in that organizational context. It's not the only reason that you should learn to facilitate. You should learn to facilitate because it makes workplaces better.
Yeah.
But if you are, serious about progressing in your career, you're absolutely right, Sooz. Like, you need these human skills. That is what's going to set you apart in the age of AI. So I think it really does matter. And as I mentioned to you, we were talking about this just before we started recording. I do a lot of work with young people on giving them facilitation skills so that they enter the workforce with this armory that they really need to be successful in those environments.
Because it's not just about, again, educating the younger demographic to be like the older demographic is what sometimes training and environment can be. It's not about that. We have to retrain all the demographics. We have to retrain millennials and the boomers that are just kind of leaving the workforce now into millennials taking over the leadership roles or being in leadership roles. They have to skill themselves to be more communicative and creative and collaborative in a different way, because the world of work has changed and it's different from how they had to work.
Yeah.
And it's not about, it was different in our day. Yes, it was different as it was before us or before millennials as well. But they have to, if you're a person that is used to working one way, you also have to adapt. You have to change and adapt to be able to work with every single person that's coming into the workforce and into the workplace. And we have to be more diverse, more open and empathetic towards people in every environment that they're in. And one of the best things about that is technology can help us to do that, right?
Exactly.
And I think this is the mindset that is not spoken about enough. And I know that this is what we're both talking about. It is the human aspect. The technology is a tool, and we as humans are the ones that are using those tools, right?
Yeah.
So online facilitation, in-person facilitation, any piece of technology, any if we were doing in-person sessions, we'd have paper and pens. Those are the tools that we would use, right?
Yeah.
In an online environment, we're using the screen, the mouse, the website, whatever online. They're a tool, right? It's no different than, it's not a replacement, and it should never be in that way. It's a tool to be able to do it. Again, another ramble there, Emily. But I wanted to ask lots more questions, especially around tools. But I'm aware that we're going almost an hour already, Emily. We're having such a great chat. So what are some 3 tips that you can share with people around redesigning for remote environments? So let's look at it from not just a facilitator, but also as any person within any environment that are doing that. So what can you share with our audience to take away today, Emily?
Yeah, sure. Well, the first one probably is not going to surprise you. It's all about the mindset and intention. So having it really clearly written down where you want to take people from and to, and the way that they're going to show up to get the most success out of that, and just state it. It's like what I was saying with the Digi-Mindful. Don't be afraid to have a couple of core mindsets that you start whatever session it is that you're running, explicitly saying, today we're going to be Digi-Mindful. I know that we're all remote. We all know that those distractions get in the way. Here's a little bit of time to, modify those things for yourself. The second thing that I would say, the second key principle for designing things for remote, something we actually haven't spoken about that much, but where you are using online tools, let's take the example of virtual whiteboards, since this is something that's very popular for people that are trying to run collaborative sessions remotely. Make sure that it's not too many, and make sure that it's not too much. What I mean by this is that a lot of times when I see people running these remote sessions, they'll say, great, here's a Miro board. First, what we're going to do is we're going to use Post-its. Then we're going to comment on each other's work. Then we're going to use timers. Then we're going to prioritize using this voting tool. And there's some people in the room who are like, cool, I use that every day. And there's other people in the room who are like, I've never used this tool before, and I feel like I can't contribute. This session's not for me. It's not accessible. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with virtual whiteboards, but I would always recommend limit the functionalities you expect from other people. Don't take anything for granted in terms of how easy something is or how people will adapt to it, because you simply don't know. And make sure that it doesn't get in the way of people's ability to engage with your session. I think that's something really important to mention before we kind of, end our conversation. And then the third thing I would say is, don't disregard all of that lovely stuff that you can do face to face. Always think about, how can I make this the same, if not better, in the virtual environment? But that doesn't mean you need to find a new tool for everything that you want to do in the virtual environment. It means encourage people to adapt their own space, get them moving around in their environment. Think about colorful, playful ways to bring dynamics you would face to face into those virtual environments. I'll give you a very quick example. When I run longer training programs, so where people are coming back, a couple of days, 3 times 3 hours, something like that, there's a game that I invented called Spot the Difference. Sometimes when we run things face to face, we might have a bit of a dynamic before we go into that next part of the session. And Spot the Difference is my way of doing this. It also gets people to come back on time from the breaks, which is the initial problem that I was trying to fix.
Okay.
So every time there's a break, I invite one person to turn off their camera and make a change to their background. When everyone comes back, they turn on the background, everyone guesses what the change is. It sounds ridiculous, but
I bet that's great.
Everybody loves it. And that is something that you can't do in the face-to-face environment in the same way. So this is exactly what I mean. Like, take advantage of that setting, and don't think that because you can't engage with people face-to-face, you can't affect their environment, because you absolutely can. You just got to think about how.
I love it. Absolutely love it. What a fun way to bring people back in the room, isn't it? In the online room, to do Spot the Difference. I love that, Emily. I could talk to you for hours and hours, and I think we deserve an in-person meet at some point to be able to talk this through even further, Emily. But people can learn more about you from your book, which is accessible through bit.ly/pathoftheguide. And it'll also be in the show notes and anywhere around that you're watching or listening to this video recording. And I just want to thank you so much for sharing just a little tidbit of all of the great things that you're doing and how you're helping help people be more human as well, right? You're helping that. And thank you as well for coming on board today for the podcast, Emily. It's been a pleasure to speak to you.
Yeah, pleasure to speak to you, Sooz. Thanks so much.
Okay, take care. Thanks. See you in the next one.
Thanks, bye.
Thanks for listening to Digital Dominators. I hope today's episode gave you something practical or at least a bit of a boost to keep things going in this mad digital world. If you're enjoying the podcast, hit subscribe so you don't miss what's coming up. There's loads more good stuff on the way and some brilliant guests lined up too. And if you fancy going a bit deeper, come and join the Digital Dominators community. It's totally free and it's where I share bonus trainings, podcast extras and tools to help you build confidence with your digital skills. You'll also get access to my social media prompt calendar so you can finally stop staring at that blank screen wondering what to post. Just head to technologycoachingonline.com/digital dominators to get started. Alright, that's it from me just now. Stay curious, keep showing up, and I'll catch you in the next one.